Alright, we can be honest with each other. This season is not going quite the way that you or I had thought, especially considering the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs went 15-2 last season with a roster that I'm pretty sure we would all admit was not quite so good as this one. The wide receivers are back on track. The defense is pretty much returned. The one thing that is really, however, better than last season is the offensive line. And you would think that all of those elements put together would make for a much better team. And look, this is coming from me, someone who said all offseason the Kansas City Chiefs could be a better team and have more losses than last year. That said, I did not expect them to have 3 losses through 5 games. But that one element that I talked about, the offensive line being so much better than it was last year, I think is something very much worth examining further. And there is one element, well, there's 2 elements really, but one element I want to talk about today because the other one I've talked about a whole lot. So there's one element that I want to talk about today that is not just giving me hope for this season, it's giving me hope for the long term. But we should start with the offensive line in general, and we will do just that right now. This comes to us from the weekly rankings from PFF. The offensive line for the Kansas City Chiefs is ranked 5th in the NFL, stating Kansas City's offensive line took another step in the right direction in Week 5 despite the team's loss to the Jaguars. The unit let up just 8 pressures and no sacks or quarterback hits on 46 plays. The group's resulting 91.33 PFF pass blocking efficiency rating ranked 6th this week. Right tackle Jawaan Taylor continues to struggle in run blocking, earning a negative grade on 23.7% of the run plays. 1 in 4 running plays, Jawaan Taylor doesn't just not do good, he hurts the team. The worst rate among all right tackles. Best player, Creed Humphrey. Humphrey has allowed pressure on 0.9% of pass plays this season, which leads all NFL offensive linemen. Now, one name that we did not read on the positive end of things here, not on the best player shelf there for the Kansas City Chiefs, but also one player that was not targeted by this blurb for being a negative on the offensive line was Kingsley Suamataia. Now, if we look at his general sort of goings-on this season, he's played 329 snaps. Be honest. Coming into this season, did you see him getting through 5 games? Did you see him playing 329 consecutive snaps without being benched? Was he benched at one point? I don't think he was benched. I think he came out of the game. Don't hold me to that. Did you see him, however, retaining his starting position heading in to Week 6? Did you see him having committed just 1 penalty through the first quarter of the season? Did you see him allowing just 1 sack through the first quarter of the season? Now, 1 sack through 5 games is more than Joe Thuney gave up all of last season. But it's not a devastating number. It is not, I believe, what anyone was afraid was going to happen coming into this season. It's not what anyone was afraid was going to happen when we saw Kingsley Suamataia absolutely exploded on 2 separate occasions during a preseason in which he saw very limited opportunities. I think everyone's sort of fear was that Kingsley was going to be one of these offensive linemen that just got destroyed until the point where Andy Reid had no choice but to bench him. But those are just the big 3. Snaps, penalties, sacks allowed. What else do we have here from Kingsley Suamataia so far this season? Well, pass pass block snaps played account for 227 of those 329 plays. So you're giving up 1 sack so far on 227 pass blocking snaps. He ranks 33rd in the NFL in run block snaps played, which is probably not surprising. He has 1 penalty, 1 sack allowed. He is allowed 3 hits. Now, one thing that's interesting here is you see 97th ranked. That is 97th among offensive linemen. So there are, 150 starting linemen in the NFL? So yeah, not the greatest percentile there. But is it what you thought it would be? What about pressures? 11 pressures sounds like a lot. It's better than his hits allowed statistic, ranking him 90th among 150-ish starting offensive linemen. Now, that's basically the bottom third of the league. Basically. But coming into this season, did you believe he was going to be in the top 2/3 of the league? So, take that for what it's worth. But something else worth considering is that Kingsley Suamataia has been getting better. If we take a look at his pass blocking snaps here, we have, now for whatever reason, PFF is kind of backwards and you can't get all of the weeks onto the screen, so I reverse ordered them. So you have the most recent week at the top, you have the Chargers game at the bottom. The Chargers game there, a 56, I believe it was 56.9. So a yellow score there, if you are more color-oriented than number-oriented. And then he had, against the Eagles and the Giants, pretty bad days pass blocking, with a 33.8 pass blocking grade in each of those games. Those were challenging games. The Eagles are always going to bring it, and the Giants have a very good defensive line. So, those, while they can't be excused, they can be explained. They were days where Kingsley struggled. Still, in those games, did not commit any penalties. Still, between those games, must have given up just 1 sack. Yeah, gave up 1 sack against Philadelphia. But then he bounced back against Baltimore and ended up with a pass blocking grade of 88.2 and a 75.1 last week, though he did have that penalty. Without that penalty, I imagine that his pass blocking grade would have been better, because I believe it was it a holding penalty? I can't remember exactly, but I imagine his pass blocking grade would have been better. So you saw a guy who started the season mediocre, bottomed out in weeks 2 and 3, and has rebounded ever since. Now, if he has a bad game somewhere in the near future, that is not to write him off. It is to say that there are still some things that he has to learn. But an overall move in the right direction. We see his sort of extended statistics here, having given up in week 2 4 hurries and 5 pressures. That was that Eagles game, not his best performance. Then you saw the next week against the Giants, just 2 pressures, just 1 hurry, but he also gave up a hit, and that made his pass blocking grade suffer. Then you saw him with no pressures, no hurries, no hits, no sacks versus the Baltimore Ravens. Then gave up a pressure and a hurry this past week against Jacksonville. So these are ultimately moves in the right direction in the area of the game where everyone was afraid Kingsley Suamataia would let the Kansas City Chiefs down. But there's more to be said here. everyone kind of knew coming into the season that if he had a strength, it was in the run-blocking department. And he has kind of proven that out. But more consistently, he has proven that out. Without as deep a floor, he has proven that out. But also without as high a ceiling so far. Now, obviously limited opportunities in the running game versus the passing game, so about a 2-to-1 ratio. So if you are looking at his goofs, all of a sudden one goof in the running game weighs a whole lot more than it does in the passing game, because there are so fewer, because there's not as many running plays as there are passing plays. So when you're looking at this, the good thing to see here is there was a little bit of a bottom in week 3 at a 49.2 run blocking grade, but outside of that, and again, that's against a very good defensive line. Outside of that, you're looking at a guy who is scoring in the okay to pretty good range. 50, 59, I believe it was the first week, 62, 66.2 in week 2, a 49.2 in week 3, a 64.9 in week 4, and a 57.6 in week 5. So you're looking at a guy who is finding stride in the running game and is still growing in the passing game. But overall, looking at his performances, you see a guy whose bottom was a pretty bad game against the Giants, which is understandable, but it's not a terrible, it's a bad grade. 44.5 is a bad grade, but it's not the worst grade you're going to see this season for any offensive lineman in the NFL. Outside of that, a yellow score is okay. A yellow score is okay. An orange score, pretty bad. A green score is good, and a light green score is pretty good. So you have a guy who, I think to the surprise of all of us, is doing pretty well this season. I believed in Kingsley, but still, obviously, I had reservations coming into this year. I did not know that versus the Ravens, for example, he would score an 88.2 in pass blocking. But here is something I want to bring up. And I know I get in trouble for doing this. And I know the athlete is not the football player. Chris Lindstrom, heading into the season, was PFF's #1 ranked offensive guard in the NFL. Here is his RAS score. So, first off, one of the things that Andy Reid and company love is the offensive arm length. I don't know why I kept saying offensive, but the arm length there, Chris Lindstrom with a 34 1/8 inch arm. Pretty good length arm, especially for an offensive guard. He is 6'3", 308 with 25 reps on the bench press. This is the #1 guy in the NFL. This is why I'm making this comparison, and I will get back to it a little bit in a moment. The #1 executing offensive guard in the NFL. 34 1/4 inch arms, 6'3 1/2", 308, and 25 inch arms. Or 25 reps on the bench press, pardon me. While you have Kingsley Suamataia with 34 1/4 inch arms, slightly longer arms. He's 6'4 1/2", so he's an inch taller. He's 326 pounds, so he has basically 20 pounds, 20 pounds on Lindstrom when he came into the NFL. And then he did 31 reps versus 25. 6 more reps on the bench press. The explosive numbers, not quite as good a comparison for Kingsley. Kingsley beats Lindstrom in arm length, height, weight, and bench. Vertical, 30 1/2 inches for Lindstrom, 28 for Kingsley. So while it's a win for Lindstrom, it's 2.5 inches on a 28-inch vertical. 9'9" broad jump for Lindstrom, 9'2" for Kingsley. You see these elite numbers at offensive guard for Lindstrom. Very close numbers for Kingsley. Chris Lindstrom had a 4.91 40-yard dash, a 5.04 for Kingsley Suamataia. So a tenth of a second difference, 0.14 seconds difference, 0.13 seconds difference between these two athletes. But you're looking at a guy who is bigger, weighs more, and is stronger in Kingsley Suamataia. 10-yard splits are fairly close, 5/100ths of a second difference there. So why do I bring this up? Why compare these athletes when we're talking about Kingsley Suamataia, who is outperforming what it was that we thought he could be? Well, it's this. Kingsley Suamataia has the ceiling to be one of the best guards in the NFL. 100% without reservations. I do not mince my words when I say that Kingsley Suamataia has the tools to do that. Whether or not he can get it done, I can't say. Whether or not he can get it done, I will say, obviously, it's doubtable. But if he takes that 88 pass blocking score that he had versus the Ravens, I know, not the greatest defense in the NFL, not the greatest defense in Ravens history, still an NFL defense. If he takes that grade and he regularizes that in his performance, and he started to versus the Jaguars, if he can do that from week to week, he will be one of the best offensive guards in the NFL. And why do I bring up the tools? Why do I keep pointing to the athlete that is Kingsley Suamataia? Well, simply this. Without the tools, say he was 308 pounds like Lindstrom. Say he had 32-inch arms like a couple of the offensive tackle prospects from this year's draft. Maybe he can score that 88 semi-regularly. Peter Skoronski had 32-inch arms, didn't he? Drafted very high in the draft. Say that he did have those, he did lack those tools, I should say. Then it's harder to reach that ceiling consistently. But he does have those tools. So if he has an off game physically, if he has an off game from the mental standpoint of things, he still has the tools necessary to win. He is big. He is strong. He is fast. Kingsley Suamataia is quickly turning into a serviceable offensive lineman from what we thought was going to be a liability. And going from that serviceable offensive lineman to good offensive lineman is just one more step. Going from good to great is one more step after that. Does he have that in him? I don't know yet. But we have seen good play several times this season from Kingsley. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.